All right, Nick, let's talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Really great season thus far. The very beginning, things were questionable at one point in time, but I think they've turned it around. Notre Dame has done fantastic down the stretch this season, getting up all the way to number 5 in the power rankings. This is a team that's looking really, really good. And despite them looking really good, they've also got some really good news when it comes to the college football playoff as well. Before we get to that, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, some good news for Notre Dame when it comes to the college football playoff rankings. I think they get in there and they get a good seed being that number 5 non-conference team. Some people thought that might be a hindrance to them. I think if all said and done, you look at the path that Notre Dame has to take in this college football playoff, it's going to help them out just a little bit. Let's get into the article and we can talk more about it on the other side. This is from A to Z Sports. It says on Tuesday night, the latest college football playoff rankings were released. There wasn't a ton of massive surprises, but we did get answers to how some teams will be valued in the end. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish came in as the number 5 team in the rankings following the Indiana Hoosier loss to Ohio State last weekend. In that scenario, Notre Dame would be the number 7 seed in the playoffs as the second highest ranked non-conference champion. With the Irish not being in a conference, the number 5 seed is the best and most advantageous path towards trying to win a national championship, at least in theory. I think that's pretty good news for the Irish. If we look a little bit later at their path to the college football playoff, I think this is probably best case scenario for them outside of being a conference championship, getting some sort of first round bye. Looking really good for the Irish. Curious what your thoughts on this are, Nick. But before we get to you, Notre Dame fans, in the comment section below, how are you feeling? You get to see the early predictions of where Notre Dame's going to end up in this college football playoff. What do you think? Do you think it's an easy ride? Do you think it's going to be tough? Let us know your thoughts on their seeding and if you think it should even be a little bit different in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think this all means for the Fighting Irish?
It is an absolutely outstanding sign. Obviously, in the new era of the college football playoff, you got 12 teams making the playoff. The first 4 seeds obviously get that first round bye. But it's important to understand because we're dealing with the new college football world with a multi-round playoff system. You got to almost think how the professional leagues handle the postseason. And it sounds kind of obvious and cliche and maybe even dumb when I say this, but the most important thing to winning is in terms of winning the national title, winning the whole tournament, is to not lose. And here's what I mean by that. There's a lot of really good, talented teams that are serious every year, like in the National Football League, for example, that just get knocked out because they have an off game against a really good opponent early in the postseason, right? They play a team that's getting hot at the right time. They play a team that was banged up, that was a low seed. They got healthy, and now they're better than their record, right? That happens every year in the NFL. Sometimes, in terms of the early postseason matchups, it's about who you play, not necessarily your seeding, your ranking, and things like that. That's why it's always very important to be a lot of times to be luckier than good. If you get a tough matchup earlier on in terms of alignment, who you're going to play, that can mean an early exit. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish, if you look at their structure right now, are in a great position. Let's go ahead and pull up the basic projection of how we expect the playoff bracket to go. If you want to go ahead and throw this up on the screen, this was a screenshot earlier. You can see on the left side right there, you can see Notre Dame's opening matchup projection right now is SMU, Southern Methodist University. SMU's had a great season. I think we all expect Notre Dame to win that game handily, especially the way they're playing. Then they have a matchup likely against Texas. Texas, good football team, but the reality is Texas has had a very, very light schedule. They've struggled against teams like Georgia. They've struggled against Vanderbilt. We'll see how they do this weekend against Texas A&M. They've battled with some injuries. Texas is a team that I don't want to say choked last year in the college football playoff, but they certainly did not play their best game. And then after that, you're already into the semifinals, which probably will be against a Miami Hurricanes team, which is great offensively, but terrible defensively, right? So you get an opportunity there. Basically, if you look at this bracket, the teams that kind of scared, I would say, any team the most would probably be Georgia, Oregon, and Ohio State, and they're completely on the other side. This is a great job for Notre Dame because anytime you're in a tournament like this, your goal is to just get to the final round, get to yourself in the championship game with a chance to win it, right? That is the goal. You hear this all the time in NCAA tournament time. What are those words? Survive and advance. Early on, it's all about just getting through it, getting into those late round playoff games where you have a chance to win it all. And Notre Dame, the way it's currently projected, is going to be in a great position to do just that.
Yeah, Nick, and I think, any bracket where on your side there's no traditional SEC teams over there. I know Texas is now an SEC team, but traditionally those SEC powerhouses or the Big 10, Big 12 old school powerhouses all on the other side of the bracket. I mean, when you look at this, I'll list off the teams: Indiana, Penn State, SMU, Miami, Texas. Those are who you're going to be fighting against. I mean, those are some good teams. Those are teams that have had good seasons. But when you look at the other side of the bracket and it's Oregon, Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio State, Boise State, and Arizona State, obviously not the two lower seeds there. But that side of the bracket strikes much more fear into my heart if I am a Notre Dame fan than the side of the bracket you're on. You got a pretty favorable bracket. I think it's a good bracket, lines up good for Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a team that really plays tough. They slow the game down. They can play good football, and I think they match up well against a lot of these teams on their side of the bracket. I think team like Texas probably struggles against Notre Dame. I don't know if Notre Dame outright comes and beat them, but I think they have a really good opportunity and they line up really well against a team like Texas, much better than they do against some of these more fast-paced offenses. Notre Dame's not really a fast-paced offense, so to speak. So if you had to go against a team like Oregon of the world, Tennessee, Ohio State, those are teams that if they get out in front of you, it's really hard to catch up, and that's not really Notre Dame's forte this season. So I think it was a really good matchup. I think overall, really great news for the Fighting Irish. I'm excited to see after this week where the chips lie and if they can keep this favorable ranking.
Yeah, just one final point to hit on there. If you look at everyone on their side of the bracket, none of these teams, none of these programs, I should say, with the exception of Texas last season, have had any national title relevant success, right? Notre Dame obviously made the national title game, made the playoff, I believe, I want to say 7 years ago. I made the playoff game, national title, I think 12 years ago, playoff game 7 years ago, something like that. I may have the years off a little bit, but the point is they've been there relatively recently as a program. Texas has been there once, and I feel like the past 20 years, obviously SMU, Indiana, Penn State, Miami have been nowhere close. Championship DNA matters when it comes to programs in the playoffs. Texas is the only one on that side of the bracket that has anything remotely close to that. Notre Dame arguably has more than Texas. Right now, Fighting Irish fans, you're set up really well if this projection holds true. Handle business this weekend, and you're going to be in a great position to make a run come playoff time.